Depending on who you ask, crypto is either the absolute biggest technological shift since the internet, or it's literally the greatest scam in human history. Welcome to this explainer. Today we're diving straight into a trillion-dollar illusion. We're going to dissect the psychology behind a massive system that basically promises you can get rich for absolutely free. Take a look at this number, $64.8 billion. That was the staggering size of Bernie Madoff's historic Ponzi scheme, literally the largest one in recorded history. He just took money from new investors to pay off the early ones, right up until the whole thing completely collapsed. But here is the terrifying realization we are exploring today. What if the entire crypto industry operates on this exact same underlying premise?
Okay, let's really break this down. In traditional finance, assets usually generate actual, tangible value. A company makes a product, a farm grows food. But most people buy crypto for one singular reason, to sell it to a greater fool for a higher price later on. Because the system produces absolutely no inherent value, early investors can only make a profit if a massive influx of money is poured in by new recruits. Mathematically, it requires a never-ending supply of victims just to survive.
Part 1. The failure of Bitcoin. Way back in 2009, Satoshi Nakamoto had this grand vision for a revolutionary global currency. But, as you'll see, that utopian vision totally collapsed under its own technical limitations. Just look at the numbers here. The Bitcoin network processes an incredibly sluggish 7 transactions per second. Meanwhile, traditional networks like Visa easily handle 1,700. Add in the massive, real-world energy waste of its mining process, and using Bitcoin as actual currency becomes completely absurd. It's really just become a deflationary shell, used almost entirely for get-rich-quick speculation. But, wait, that brings up a massive, glaring contradiction. If Bitcoin fundamentally failed as a currency and a means of exchange, why on earth did a digital artist named Beeple just sell a digital JPEG file for $69 million? I mean, how do we possibly explain that kind of money moving around?
Part 2. NFTs. Manufactured hype.
Here is the secret. To keep a decentralized Ponzi scheme alive, you desperately need new money. Enter the era of NFTs. That legendary $69 million Beeple stunt? It was a brilliantly manufactured frenzy. You see, the anonymous buyer, known as Metakovan, was actually a crypto entrepreneur who conveniently owned 59% of his own fractional token, B20. So, engineering that massive $69 million headline, it pumped the value of his own token right through the roof. Which begs the very next, arguably most important question of all. What are you actually owning when you purchase an NFT? When someone drops hundreds of thousands of dollars on a digital cartoon of an ape, what exactly is legally theirs? Well, you don't own the copyright. You don't even own the picture itself. The reality is you are literally just buying a simple entry in a database, and that entry contains a web link pointing to an image that anyone else on the planet can right-click and save for absolutely free.
Part 3. Web 3.0. The rebrand.
As the public started catching on and NFTs became culturally toxic, the industry just slapped a fresh coat of paint onto the grift. The new pitch? Web 3.0. Suddenly, blockchain was going to magically fix everything: real estate, healthcare, gaming. But as Berkeley researcher Nicholas Weaver sharply points out, when somebody says you can solve X with blockchain, they don't understand X, and you can just ignore them. You simply cannot replace complex legal contracts or highly sensitive medical records with unalterable computer code. It's a textbook example of a solution in desperate search of a problem. So if the tech itself isn't actually solving any real-world problems, we have to follow the money. Who is really funding this massive Web 3.0 revolution? Who are the true puppeteers pulling the strings behind the curtain of this supposed decentralized utopia? Think about it. The Web 3.0 promise was this beautiful, decentralized internet, supposedly taking power away from big tech and giving it back to everyday users. But the reality? The space is aggressively funded, heavily controlled, and completely manipulated by massive venture capital firms like Andreessen Horowitz. Instead of decentralization, it's highly centralized wealth dictating the entire market. So the crucial point here is understanding their playbook. Why do VCs love crypto so much? Simple. It allows them to completely bypass traditional financial regulations. Step 1. They invest in a startup early. Step 2. They receive massive amounts of unregistered tokens. Step 3. They use their enormous influence to hype the project to the moon. And step 4. When the public rushes in fueled by FOMO, the VCs dump their tokens onto everyday retail investors, cashing out unregulated returns in just a matter of months. Part 4. Exploiting the vulnerable.
Now, this isn't just about wealthy tech bros losing disposable income on digital art anymore. This machine directly crushed vulnerable populations. Just look at this blinding hyper-optimism. A general partner at A16Z described the play-to-earn crypto game Axi Infinity by saying its future was as big as your imagination will allow. The industry actively pitched this as a revolutionary way for impoverished people to make a living wage just by playing a video game.
But as always, financial reality eventually catches up to the hype. The game's token, SLP, which players earn to cash out for real-world money, crashed by 99%. A catastrophic 99% collapse in value.
And the human cost of that crash was absolutely devastating. Players in developing countries like the Philippines were explicitly targeted and given false hope. I mean, they treated this game as a full-time job just to feed their families and pay their electric bills. But because the game's economy was effectively a pyramid structure that strictly demanded an endless stream of new players to generate yield, the second those new recruits dried up, the world's poorest were left holding the bag, in severe financial ruin.
All of this tragedy, the manufactured hype, the blatant market manipulation, it all leads us to one ultimate question. A question that completely shatters the fundamental narrative of the entire crypto industry. 13 years after its inception, why is there still no solid, mainstream use case for this technology? Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how crypto enthusiasts aggressively defend the industry by saying, hey, we are still early, comparing it to the dawn of the internet. But let's actually look at the history here. The internet was born in 1983, bringing almost immediate real-world utility like weather reports and email. Bitcoin was born in 2009. 13 years later, it generated zero solid utility, better than our existing centralized systems. It excels at exactly one thing: unregulated trading and speculation.
Part 5. The ticking time bomb.
So, what does this all mean for us? Rather than a massive financial leap forward, this entire ecosystem is a highly fragile, artificial construct, and it's kept alive by three extremely toxic pillars: extreme greed, mass delusion, and an overpowering fear of missing out. The industry has to actively silence criticism because the very moment new recruits stop pouring in their life savings, the entire machine grinds to a devastating halt.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one stark, provocative thought to take away from all this data. If the underlying technology doesn't actually solve real-world problems better than the centralized systems we already use, and if the entire multi-billion-dollar structure relies solely on finding a greater fool to cash out, at what point does this ticking time bomb finally go off? Thanks for joining me today. Keep investigating the facts and never, ever stop asking the hard questions.